Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, October 30th, and that means it's time for another Financial Friday series with ASE Credit Union. I am Jenna Minyard. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer for the Montgomery Area Chamber of Commerce, and we're excited to have you. Today, our series is going to be all about employees. Super excited about the content, and then obviously we're excited about the partnership that we've continued with ASE Credit Union. As most of you know, we launched the Work Together Business Studio brand and programming this time last year. And we're just excited that we're able to continue that. We're excited that we were able to partner with ASC for this series. And you'll see some additional programming coming, obviously, over the next couple of months and then into 2021. The programming and really the business studio itself was really created and launched to help the community and to help our small business community as they launch, grow, and thrive. So to kick things off, I want to make sure that I introduce Andrea McCain. She is the Chief Experience Officer at ASE Credit Union. In her role as Chief Experience Officer at ASE, she's responsible for human resources, for training, marketing, the call center, and e-services. She has both a bachelor's and master's degree in human resources and is certified as a senior professional in human resources and a SHRM Senior Certified Professional. Andrea has 35 years of human resource experience. So we're excited to have her as the panel today, and I'm excited to kick it off.
Good morning, and today we're going to talk all about employees. We'll be discussing the different types of employees, how to source and recruit candidates, the interview process, important employment laws to know, payroll, benefits, and performance management. We'll start by talking about the different types of employees that may work for your company. You have regular employees that will be paid through your company payroll. There's also independent contractors, and then finally temporary employees that you might hire through a staffing agency. A regular employee is covered by federal and state employment and labor laws. You as the employer will direct the work of these employees, and you will provide the tools and supplies needed to do their job. These employees will earn either an hourly rate or an annual salary, and as we said before, they'll be compensated through your company payroll. And their annual earnings will be reported by you as the employer on a W-2. These employees are also eligible for benefits based on their employment status. Secondly, we have independent contractors. They are not covered by federal and state employment and labor laws, and they may work for multiple employers. You as the employer may not direct their work and or provide the tools and supplies needed to do the job. Typically, they are compensated through accounts payable, and they may have a contract with you that is for the total amount to be paid when the job is completed. As an employer, if you have independent contractors that are earning over $600 in a calendar year, you will issue them a 1099 form. And these independent contractors are not eligible for benefits by your company. And lastly, we have temporary employees. They are covered by federal and state employment and labor laws. You are a co-employer with the staffing agency that you hire temporary employees from. The assignments may be temporary or they may be long-term, but they are always for a limited period of time. A temporary employee can work up to 1,040 hours each year, and you are unable to hire the same temporary employee for more than 2 consecutive years. They are compensated through the staffing agency. So you are paying off of an invoice from the staffing agency, either the rate of pay and a 10 to 20% fee for the staffing agency. These individuals are not eligible for benefits through your company. They may be receiving benefits through the staffing agency. So how do we find employees? How do we source and recruit employees? Well, the first thing to do is to start with a job posting. Here's some important things that should be included in your job posting. First, you should have the job title, and then a summary of the job responsibilities. You should also include what education, experience, skills, and knowledge that you require for this position. You should identify whether the position is full-time or part-time, and if it's part-time, the number of hours that you would like the employee to work. You can include the salary and a summary of the benefits on the job posting, but that is certainly optional. You also need to tell the candidate how to apply for the position. And at the bottom of your job posting, you need to tell the candidates that your company is an equal opportunity employer. So once you created your job posting, where will you post these job opportunities? A couple of job sites that are very popular and I would encourage you to take a look at are Indeed.com and ZipRecruiter.com. Many of the candidates that we hire at the credit union, we receive their applications through Indeed.com. Also, in the last session, you learned about creating social media platforms for your company and also a company website. These are both excellent places to post your job openings. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and if you have a company website, you definitely want to post your job openings on the company website. So now let's talk about the interview process. Here's a couple of tips in regards to the interviews. You always want to use the same interview process with each candidate. And you're going to ask the same interview questions to each candidate. Remembering that all of your interview questions need to be job related. You only need to ask questions that will help you determine if the candidate can perform the job that you're asking them to perform. And your questions, I would suggest, would be behavioral interview questions. This will allow you to evaluate prior experiences and behaviors and to determine the potential for success in the position that you're interviewing for. Let's look at a couple of examples of behavioral interview questions. Give an example of a time when you went above and beyond your job responsibilities in order to help a customer. Tell me about a time that you thought it was justified to make an exception to a policy or procedure in order to help a customer. Describe a time when you had to work with others to achieve a common goal and or complete an assignment. You notice the common denominator with these questions is that we're asking the candidate to tell us about real life experiences or behaviors that they've exhibited in the past. This will help you understand how they will handle situations in your workplace. Before you begin interviewing, you need to do some prep work. The first thing you'll want to do is to review the resume, or if you have an employment application, review the employment application. Now you're looking for gaps in employment, also looking at reasons for leaving previous jobs, and grammar and spelling errors, which will tell you a lot about attention to detail. So you'll want to make notes as you're reviewing the resume and application for some follow-up questions during the interview. Please do not write anything on the resume or the application. You'll want to write these notes on a separate document. We always want to keep the resume and the application clean for the candidate. And again, all the notes, as with questions, should be job related. So you want to make sure that you're only taking notes on answers or questions that you have that relate back to performing the job. And then take a before you enter into the interview process to review your interview questions. Make sure you're comfortable with those questions and that they will actually help you determine who is the best candidate for the job. Now, how do we structure the interview? The first thing that you'll want to do in the interview with the candidate is make introductions. Introduce yourself and what position you hold within the company. Allow them to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves. You'll want to establish a rapport with the candidate at the beginning of the interview. Now, this can be a little bit of a slippery slope, so we don't want to say anything that would cause them to believe that you are judging their answers to your rapport questions in regards to whether they can perform the job. I always recommend keeping it very, very general. Traffic, weather, did they have a hard time finding your location? Just basic general conversation to break the ice. Then I think you will take the resume and you'll discuss their work history with them. I always recommend having the candidate take you through a brief summary of their work history so that you can then ask some questions that you may have jotted down when you were preparing for the interview about their work history. Once you've completed that section, then you'll move into your behavioral interview questions, asking those questions that will allow you to learn about previous behaviors and experiences that may prepare them to be successful in your job. Once you have finished the behavioral interview questions, then you will go into detail about the job responsibilities and the expectations of the position. Allow the candidate to ask any questions that they may have about the company or about the position. I always think it's important that candidates come prepared to ask questions, and that's always an indicator to me in their interest in your company and your position. If they've taken time to research the company, research the position, and have questions ready to ask you. Once you've answered the candidate's questions, then you'll close the interview by thanking the candidate, telling them what the next steps are, and certainly not making any promises. I always like to close an interview by thanking the candidate, letting them know that we're in the interview stage of the process, and that once that's completed, we'll be back in touch with them to let them know what next steps are. If you tell the candidate that you're going to let them know something by Friday of that week, I will guarantee you that they will be calling you on Friday to know what the next steps are. Also, even if you have identified in the interview that this candidate is probably the one you're going to select, don't make any promises. There's a lot of things that have to be accomplished before you make a job offer. So you don't want to promise the job to someone before you've completed the process. It's important in the interview process to take good notes. I always start the interview by asking the candidate for permission to take notes during the interview, just a courtesy to them, and it will give you an opportunity then to take some notes on their answers to the questions. You'll want to take notes on each candidate's response to the interview question, but I encourage you not to try to write down everything that they say. Keywords that will help you recall their answers is the best way to go. Again, all the notes that you write should be job related, and they should relate back to the answers that the candidate gives to your job related behavioral interview questions. And again, we don't want to take any notes on the resume or the application. We want to keep it clean. So please have a notepad or another form to take your notes on. These notes are going to assist you in making a decision when you are comparing candidates and trying to make your employment decision. And they also give you job-related support for your hiring decision. So let's talk about some legal interview questions and different categories and what might be acceptable or unacceptable to ask. In regards to age, unacceptable questions are how old are you? Or what year did you graduate from high school or college? Acceptable questions are, if hired, can you verify that you are at least 18 years old? If in fact your company has a minimum age to employ someone, then you can ask the question in this format. Arrest or conviction. Unacceptable would be, have you ever been arrested? Arrests are not barriers for employment, so that question does not need to be asked in the interview. You can, of course, ask, have you ever been convicted of a crime? Convictions may possibly bar someone for employment with your company. If they say yes and tell you what they've been convicted of, then you are in a position as an employer to validate that conviction back to your job requirements to determine if it actually would conflict with their ability to perform the job. For example, if someone's been convicted of embezzlement, then they would not be eligible for employment in a financial institution where they're dealing with money. Citizenship. Unacceptable questions are, where were you born, or are you a U.S. citizen? Acceptable questions are, can you verify that you are eligible to work in the United States? This is the process that every employer will go through once they are ready to make an employment offer. They will need to have the candidate complete an I-9 form, and they will put them through an e-verify system to ensure that they are eligible to work in the United States. So you can ask that question about eligibility. Obviously, if they're not eligible or don't have the right documentation to work in the United States, then you can not select them for the position based on that fact. Disability. Unacceptable questions are, do you have any disabilities? It really doesn't matter whether the candidate has a disability or not. What you're interested in is, can they perform the essential functions of your job? So the question would be, are you able to perform the essential functions of this job with or without reasonable accommodation? Employers make reasonable accommodations every day to hire candidates. The only time that an employer cannot make a reasonable accommodation is if it would present a financial hardship for the company. So you don't want to discount a candidate who may have a disability and need a reasonable accommodation because of the need for that if it is something that's financially feasible. And most accommodations are either free or they come at a minimal cost. So it's important not to ask about disabilities unless you're asking it in regards to their ability to perform the essential functions of the job. Race. Unacceptable is, what is your race? Acceptable, there's really no question that you could ask in an interview that would be acceptable about race. Race is not a job-related factor. So that is something that you want to stay away from in the interview process. Religion. Unacceptable would be, what religion are you, or do you go to church? Acceptable would be, this job requires you to work some weekends. Is there any reason you would not be able to do so? And a reason that someone might give you is that their religious beliefs or practice prevent them from working a weekend schedule. An example would be those individuals that may practice a religion where their Sabbath is on Saturday. Now, I would encourage you, if there's an option to make an accommodation there, don't discount a qualified candidate because they can't work on weekends. But if it is a part of your normal work schedule, then certainly you can, for any reason, for anyone that cannot work the normal work schedule, you can not select that candidate because being able to work the work schedule is an essential function of the job. Now let's look at some employment laws that's important for every employer to be aware of. The Fair Labor Standards Act, or more commonly known as the FLSA, was brought into law in 1938. It's one of the very first employment laws. There is no minimum number of employees requirement for a company to have to comply with the FLSA. So all employers are required to comply with this law. This law covers minimum wage, which, as you know, is $7.25 an hour, unless someone is being paid on a commission basis. It also covers overtime pay for those non-exempt or hourly employees, which means that if you as an employer are scheduling that employee to work over 40 hours in a given work week, then you are responsible for paying them time and a half their regular rate of pay for any hour that they work over 40. This law also covers child labor laws, which relates mainly to the number of hours a young adult or child can work in a work week. The next employment law is one you're probably the most familiar with, and that's Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Employers with 15 or more employees are required to comply with Title VII. Title VII protects candidates and employees from discrimination in employment decisions based on race, religion, color, sex, and national origin. Next, we have the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, or the ADEA, which was brought into law in 1967. Employers with 20 or more employees are required to comply with this law. This law is a protector for older workers in regards to their employment, if they're a candidate, in regards to promotions or retirement from a company. Candidates or employees who are 40 years or older are protected by the ADEA. And this law also says that there is no mandatory retirement age for anyone. So a company cannot impose a mandatory retirement age based on this law. Next is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which came into law in 1990. It governs companies that have 15 or more employees. Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA as it's known, and governs employment decisions that are made both for candidates and employees based on the fact that they have a disability. We talked previously how to ask questions in an interview to determine if someone can perform the essential functions of the job with reasonable accommodation. The law also governs facility accessibility. So community buildings that were built in 1990 or later and or renovated all have to be accessible to those with disabilities. And lastly is the Family and Medical Leave Act, which came into law in 1993. And it governs employers who have 50 or more employees within a 75-mile radius. An employee is eligible for family and medical leave after they've completed a year of employment with the company and they have worked 1,250 hours in the past 12 months. This need for leave must be certified by a physician. An employee can have up to 12 weeks of leave. It is not paid leave. This law is in place to provide a job protection for employees who need to be away from work, but it is not a paid leave. So employees would need to take any accrued sick or vacation time and or time without pay while they're on this leave. The leave can be continuous or it can be intermittent based on a certification from the physician. Reasons for taking a family medical leave would be the birth or adoption of a child, and that's for mom and dad, who are both eligible for 12 weeks. To care for a spouse, a child, or a parent who has a serious health condition, or if the employee themselves has a serious health condition. The law was amended to include an option for 26 weeks of leave to care for covered servicemen with serious health conditions who are a spouse, a child, a parent, or next of kin to the employee. Now let's talk about how we're going to pay those employees. There's a number of ways to do that. There are in-house payroll processing softwares that are designed specifically for small businesses. Some of them, which there's many, but some of them that I would encourage you to take a look at would be the QuickBooks Payroll. ADP has a product for small businesses. Paychex or Paycor. Now, if you decide that you don't want to process your payroll in-house, then you may want to check with your accounting firm to see if they offer that service to you and can process the payroll for you. Benefits for employees. Full-time employees that are scheduled to work 30 hours or more per week are typically eligible to participate in benefits offered by the employer. Some of the ones that are more commonly seen in small businesses are health insurance, which may be either through a small group plan that the company has on its own, or providing a benefits allowance that would allow the employee a certain amount of dollars each month that they can use to buy health insurance through the marketplace. Another popular benefit for small employers is a 401k plan. This allows your employees to plan for retirement and to put away tax-deferred dollars for that retirement. The employer can match the contributions that the employee makes or not. That's optional. But the 401k is a typical benefit that's offered for employees to plan for retirement. All employees are covered under the workers' compensation insurance. So all employers would have workers' compensation insurance for their employees. And then many employees will offer a certain number of paid vacation and sick days to their employees so that they can utilize this time to be away from work when they're ill or for vacation to spend with their family and friends. And lastly, I want to spend a few minutes to talk about performance management. I encourage all employers to have an employee handbook. It doesn't have to be an extensive handbook, but there are two key policies that are important to have in your handbook. One is the Equal Opportunity Employer Policy. And this tells not only your candidates for employment, but your employees that you make all of your decisions based on job-related issues and that you are an equal opportunity employer. Secondly, is that you're an at-will employer. Alabama is one of 26 states in the United States, is still an employment at will state. What that means is that you as the employer and or the employee can make the decision to terminate the employment relationship for any reason and at any time. Now, this sounds like a great status to have as an employer, but keep in mind those employment laws that we talked about earlier. You want to make sure that if you are making the decision to separate an employee from your company, that you are in compliance with all of those laws and that those decisions are job related. I encourage you to have a job description for each position in your company. That is for your benefit as well as for the employee. That way they know what the job responsibilities are for the position, and they also know what is needed to qualify to take the position, to perform the job. From that job description, I encourage you to set performance goals and objectives each year so that your employee knows what is expected of them and they have a roadmap to being successful in the position. I also encourage an annual performance evaluation. This doesn't have to be in a formal setting, but I think it's important. You don't have to have a specific form, but I think it is important that you sit down with your employee each year and you talk about their performance goals and objectives and how they were able to meet expectations. And then lastly, when you are coaching or having corrective action with an employee because they have violated a company policy or they exhibit behaviors that are inappropriate and or that they are not performing at a meets expectations level, you want to document those conversations and have you and the employee sign the warning form so that everyone is clear on what the expectations are going forward.
Thanks again, everybody, for joining us for this series, Financial Fridays with ASE Credit Union. As you can see, Andrea's contact information is on the screen. If you have any questions or need any assistance, please reach out to them directly. And then we'll also have one final event in the series, and that is going to be Friday, November 13th. And for this last session, it's going to be all about taxes and investments. So we hope that you'll join us. Thank you again for taking time out of your day to join us today. And I hope you all have a great day. Talk to you soon.